Okay. Greg McCarran here with the Antidote. Jeremy right now is behind the camera. We're streaming live here outside of Ingersoll Tap in Des Moines, Iowa. This is the site of the perhaps not quite accurately named Bernie Sanders big game watch party for the Super Bowl. Of course, featuring my hometown Chiefs playing against 49ers tonight. I believe last time I checked, Chiefs were winning 7-3, so go Chiefs. But Bernie came in there when we arrived. There was a bus here, and there was a lot of press. And I guess Bernie came in, did a quick photo op, it sounds like, and then left. So, I guess Congressman Ro Kahana and Mark Pocan were also supposed to be here. I haven't identified them anywhere. So, I don't know. I'd almost argue in a way this was like false advertising. It was more of a photo op than an actual watch party because the man who everybody came here to see is not here to watch the big game with everybody. So, I don't know what's up with that.
It might be that he has to dash back to D.C. for the Senate trial, potentially. I don't know.
Maybe it's possible. I mean, the types that like right and left alike will all say is a charade and a scam as far as the varying sides of the political aisle that are, for whatever varying reasons, are trying to act like there's nothing wrong with anything related to Donald Trump and the bigger geopolitical picture involving collusion and impeachment. But anyhow, I digress. We're here, and this has been a pretty interesting environment. It's definitely much different than what we encountered the other night in a lot of ways. At the Donald Trump rally, people can see our videos from there. 2 of our videos are going to be posting more, I think, in the coming days, a few more things from that rally from Thursday night. But Jeremy, you had a very interesting correspondence with an Italian journalist.
Yes. The moment we got here, this woman came up to me, and I recognized her from the other night at the Trump rally when security was escorting us out. And there was this photojournalist who was really close in the mix taking photos. People can go look at that in our video that we posted this morning, asking Major Garrett about Jeffrey Epstein and Israeli military intelligence and being escorted out of the Trump rally. And so it was interesting. So she came up to us immediately when we got here, and she said that she was wanting to talk to me about what had happened with Major Garrett and the security, right? And then she said that she thought I looked like another a guy from the Humanist Report or something like that. And so she's from Italy, and she does a reporting in Italy and has been following the Trump movement for many years. And so we actually conducted an interview with her on camera, and she conducted an interview with me on camera to follow up to see what had happened with security after they escorted us out of the Trump rally on Thursday evening.
Yeah, so anybody who's interested in checking those interviews out, you can see it on. We'll be uploading them soon here. Within the next couple of days, we might have a chance to do some of that maybe later tonight or at the very latest tomorrow. And so, it's interesting getting an experience with a foreign journalist reporter. She's actually doesn't appear to be directly affiliated with anyone. She's kind of doing her own thing as far as coming here and documenting what she calls the political revolution here in the U.S. And it's very interesting to get those type of experiences and takes from people from foreign countries coming here to cover our election process. I mean, we've seen a number of foreign journalists from here. I heard somebody mention from Bulgaria here covering this. I believe there's a number of reporters, it looks like, from China here. So that's very interesting. That's one of the things that, that's an experience that is very fascinating that you really wouldn't get if you didn't go out and try to, in some cases, find these things, I guess. And so definitely a very unique experience, and this is a very lively environment. It would have been nice if Senator and some of the congressional guests were here, as there are some interesting questions that could be asked.
As you can imagine, we had some interesting questions to ask.
Yes, we did, yeah. And so I guess that takes us to tomorrow. There's a number of, I guess there's several events that we've got our eyes on possibly getting into tomorrow. A couple of caucus once the actual caucus starts at 7 o'clock and the vote tally is counted, there's several watch parties going on, at least right here in Des Moines proper. There's a Biden watch party, there's a Buttigieg watch party, and I believe a Warren watch party.
Yes.
And so they're all within really close proximity to each other. What we'd like to do is maybe, I don't know if it's possible to get names and some of like the people as far as like journalists go, activists go, who will be attending these various watch parties. But I think we have a goal. We'd like to at least try to check in on all three of these events if possible, and maybe try to conduct some interviews, some possible could turn into confrontations, you never know, at these events tomorrow night. So that's kind of what we're doing up here, and then I believe we're headed back to Kansas City on Tuesday morning.
Yes, hopefully no confrontations, just good hard-nosed questioning. And I'm still interested in making sure that we do some caucus watching tomorrow. This is where the dirty shenanigans begin, usually. Somewhere in the mix here. There's that interesting article from Berlin that we covered about Voxio, the company Voxio, related to Israeli military intelligence somehow being involved in the communications channels of the caucus reporting. And things have changed in Iowa's caucus process, actually, and they've allowed, I think, the ability to caucus from online, from a remote location. So who knows what's going to be going down with all of that?
A lot of the, if I recall correctly, some of that reporting from Berlin was centered, at least in part, around the 2012 Iowa Republican caucus, where Ron Paul was. There may have been some shenanigans with the 2012 Republican caucus in Iowa with Ron Paul and then a couple of other candidates, Romney and Rick Santorum, possibly being given favor over Ron Paul in certain aspects. And this is interesting because, we've kind of identified that we're not sure what's going on with the Sanders campaign. Could there be shenanigans going on there? I mean, I guess time will tell in the upcoming weeks and months, but that's an interesting point you brought up there with relation to the way, and I'm not an expert on it, the tallying of possible tampering with various things that goes on in the Iowa caucus. Iowa caucus is interesting because it is the first in the nation event. It kind of shapes the way the winners of this caucus will come out and have momentum compared to other places that will carry on later on down the road. So.
And if we were serious investigative journalists, or there were other serious investigative journalists, someone would have gotten to the bottom of the matter of the reporting issue in relationship to the Iowa caucuses way before this, but we didn't ask any questions to any quote-unquote authorities, and I don't know if I can't see any other reporting on the matter. So, but it's an interesting process, though, because I actually appreciate the format of the process, because it's very about like the best of the power of direct democracy, where you, instead of having an invisible ballot and anonymity, you actually stand in the public, in the light of day, with some of your neighbors, and you all hash it out about like what the deal is. So I think it's most interesting as a model that I believe that we need to implement more nationally, and not even around elections per se, but in terms of the idea of actually figuring out how to solve our local problems in a direct fashion by having regular meetings, that ancient town hall wisdom council example, get together and figure out who knows what, who knows whom, what are we going to do in terms of what are our problems and how can we solve them. So I think it's an interesting model to look at, rather than, it's so much better than any kind of like touch screen voting. But as I hinted, there's still an issue about reporting, right? What Stalin say? I care not who, about votes as long as I count them. What was it?
I can't recall. I know what you're getting. I know what you're getting at, though I can't recall the exact quote, but I know what you're getting at. There's a couple of quotes that sound kind of similar in that regard. I care not who wins the vote. I care not who makes the laws, as long as the money and all that. So there's a couple of, but I believe
that's like a parallel kind of process there in terms of the finance relationship to law and politics, and the machinery of democracy, or the machinery of voting in relationship to the questions about democracy. And so I guess my addendum to that would be in a certain way, it doesn't even matter who counts the votes, as long as the question of how those votes are then communicated is not accounted for. And I would point out that people like Bev Harris from Black Box Voting have done an analysis about the way that it actually works in terms of voting machines, for example, that become more into play during the general election. So that is a story that I think we should follow up on. Actually, the question of ES&S systems, which is that company from Nebraska that looks to have built-in backdoors into their voting machines and voting software, and it's being implemented in Johnson County in near Kansas City in Kansas, and of course that's Kobach land, Chris Kobach land, the fake czar of fake democracy.
And then, of course, if we mention that, I mean, you mentioned Chris Kobach, it just reminds me that we are in a re-election campaign where it is going to be Donald Trump running for re-election here in 2020, and you got to think of, I mean, people can talk all day what they want to say about, like, voter suppression or voter fraud or multiple votes or whatever, but I mean, we have documented history of various people who are going to be definitely supporting Trump in the 2020 election, who are also supporting him in the 2016 election.
Such as who?
Well, obviously we have, I would think of, obviously the name that sticks to mind for me would be Ken Blackwell, the former Secretary of State of Ohio, who I believe, is Mike Pence? Yes, Jewish Institute for National Security Affairs.
No, it's Jewish Institute of National Security America.
Oh, they changed it. Oh, okay. Also, a Family Research Council, very influential evangelical policy, Council for National Policy, yes.
And JINSA is very much tied into training police in Israel.
And you could guess with Jerry Boykin also being involved with the Family Research Council along with Blackwell, there's probably a good amount of overlap at some level between these varying entities. But, Blackwell, he was appointed to Vice President Pence's quote-unquote election integrity panel, I believe is what it's called. Yeah. And so we'll see what kind of roles are going on with that in 2020. But I'm just thought I'd mention that in relation when you brought up Kobach, who's somebody else who might have to be watched. I mean, I don't know the deal currently in the state of Kansas right now, but that's certainly something to keep an eye on.
The GOP just had its convention, its Kansas convention in Olathe, and their featured speaker was Kellyanne Conway.
Another person who
CNT all day.
Certainly figures into the Cambridge Analytica kind of data mining, psychographical, psychological warfare elements of the GOP operation. So, particularly that went on in 2016. I would imagine we saw Brad Parscale the other night, and we've got to upload his speech from the Trump. From the Donald Trump rally the other night in Des Moines, and of course, if you're talking about the Cambridge, can you tell people real quickly about Parscale and what his role is in the operation?
Yeah, Parscale was I believe the head of the digital analytics part of the Trump campaign.
He's playing a leading role in the re-election right now, in the re-election campaign. He's one of the very top people. I forget exactly what his official role is in the 2020 campaign. He was front and center with a lot of the...
He's like the rally fluffer or something, but he's got a meek voice though. He obviously just speaks loudly with his psychographic Death Star.
All of the he had the boring speech, whereas the charismatic speech was the Iowa State Republican Party head. That was the charismatic speech.
He was like Chris Farr. He was like, and then Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas should be living in a van down by the river. Yeah,
very, very true. But Parscale almost seemed to be bragging about him. He was mentioning things like data mining and the amounts of data that are had. He was throwing references in there to that, so I thought that might have been pretty possibly intentional on his part.
I believe that they are actually, the way that they use the rallies in the Trump campaign is one, of course, it's like collective effervescence, like Durkheim, the sort of power of group psychology and the roots of movement democracy, where they sort of gather the people. And we were noticing too, and maybe we'll talk about this more in our radio show this week, is that they were playing Proud to Be an American as if it were like dubstep, and it was so loud. It was like
there's got to be some psychological aspects to that, no question, as well as a couple of other interesting things we noticed with the musical choices that we might talk about another time. But anyway, I look forward to that.
Some Roy Cohn favorites. Yeah, no, it did seem like they were. So that's one part of it is the obviously, and even Trump did his normal thing where he's sort of he's like he's sort of like giving his fans the ultimatum, right? He's always doing that. Like he's like, I didn't have to come out and talk to you guys. Who you guys gonna vote for? If you don't vote for me, you're gonna lose everything anyways. To the socialist, democratic, radical.
It's the same. It's almost what he was basically saying at the was it the Israeli American Congress event with the Adelsons? It was basically telling these wealthy Zionists, those people, real estate people, the kind of people who used to come out how what was the term he used for them?
You all are killers.
Killers, yes. And how you're gonna have, if you don't vote for me, you're gonna have nothing, basically. And so it's the same. I gotta say, that's one thing about Trump is he does seem to speak the same to crowds, whether it's a crowd of wealthy movers and shakers or just a bunch of everyday average Iowans.
And basically he was just sort of saying, look, I didn't have to even come out here. Who are you going to vote for? The Democrats are going to take everything away from you. And here I am giving you my performance for an hour.
But it's interesting. It's also done under something Trump does very well, which is butter people up and flatter them and tell them what they want to hear. It's an interesting combination of methods in speech making.
It's true. It's true. It's very, like we talked about, there's definitely this NLP, neuro-linguistic programming aspect combined with the Roy Cohn, real New York heavy-handed style of attack dog politics. But that's only one side, I think, of the Trump rallies, because as we pointed out before, it looks like they test out these phrases. Like they're like 3-word phrases, right? It's sort of like build the wall, and build the wall just sort of like it's created this sort of mass hysteria at the rally. Or remember how Lock Her Up played, and of course Trump said, "Oh, I was just chumping y'all. We weren't going to lock anybody up. I actually love Hillary Clinton." He kept on talking about he wanted to run against Hillary again.
Run against her. We'll have some analysis of that too, maybe. Drain the swamp, build the wall, lock her up. I mean, you tried to get a new chant, a new 3-word chant, more Epstein lawyers.
More Epstein lawyers. More. It wouldn't take. I think maybe if Trump had done it, it would have taken. But I think that part of that is what they're doing, and this is why Parscale is there, is he's testing memes. He's testing memes on the mass Trump audience to see what actually creates a visceral reaction in their base. And then what they're going to do is that they roll those memes out. And the other part about those 3-word phrases is they're also neuro-linguistic programming, meaning that they not only are short and simple and to the point, they create a sort of action, but they're also very visual, right? Build the wall, and you can sort of see the wall that's being built. Lock her up, and you see Hillary Clinton behind the bars, right?
You can see also the hypothetical swamp being drained, although there's clearly been none of that going on in the last 3.5 years. But Jeremy,
well, that's because it's all it's a big Trump pump and dump op.
Jeremy, if we get him reelected, give him 4 more years and help him defeat the evil demon rats, then we will get all that.
And he'll eventually tell us who knocked down the towers because he failed to do so once again.
That's what Robert Davis says. Anyway, that's what he told Kevin Garrett.
So I do think that that's a key piece of what they do. That's why Parscale is involved as the sort of pre-Trump fluffer at the Trump rallies, is to actually test his next generation memes before he rolls them out into their sort of Breitbart style disinformation psychographic warfare Death Stars. And it's going to be different this time around, but it'll be hyped up even more, I think. Because people have learned a little bit, and some of the drama is wearing off. So I think they're gonna hype it up to a good extent. Because Parscale himself did not talk well. He didn't emote well. He didn't really connect with the audience. So it doesn't make sense. He's a data guy. I mean, but Trump likes him because he's tall and has a big beard, I think. I don't know. So.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I mean, we'll see what happens with this. But I mean, this is not in any way, shape, or form to turn a blind eye to any type of shenanigans that go on with the other side of the political. But I think right now with the Trump operation, what we saw in 2016 and what we're seeing, and you're noticing play out in 2020, it's very obvious that it very directly, I think, in just such a way you can really see it if you're really paying attention to it. It just needs to be confronted as much as possible in many different ways as possible, because it's really nefarious operations that are going on with these varying types of warfare that are being carried out, and as our society becomes more and more technologically advanced.
Okay, we'll sign off for now and come back to do another little live stream a little bit later.